All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Media Planet podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Jarman, along with my co-host, John, on the other end.
Hey,
And today we're going to be talking about remakes, film remakes, and I think this is a topic of fairly hot discussion lately, being that they're making all these new movies that are kind of new, but not because they're remakes. I mean, we've got several coming out in the very near future. And so first off, one I'm excited for is the Power Rangers movie, the new one, and that one is considered a reboot as far as I'm concerned. So let's consider talking about the deal between reboots versus remakes. John, what's your opinion on what separates the two?
I think what we have is when you have a remake, you're almost looking at something that is almost frame for frame the same. That's what I feel a remake is. Uh, I think when you have a reboot, you're kind of starting the series over again. You're hoping for a new franchise run at it, such as different movies. You look at, as an example, Halloween was one made in 1978 by John Carpenter. Well, Rob Zombie did it in 2007, and it got bashed hard. But it wasn't necessarily a remake because, as Zombie and Carpenter have said in interviews, that when they talked about it, John Carpenter told Rob Zombie to take that movie and make it his own. So they were just basically trying to reboot the franchise for a new generation. But a lot of people can't differentiate that difference. But
And when they
when you
do,
have a remake, I think you're looking at stuff that's shot frame for frame. There's
okay,
some examples like those foreign movies. They might be shot frame for frame, just converted to English for us.
yeah, and with the reboot, would it be the same story for the original movie, or is it like the same story but different script, or sometimes do they do a completely separate story altogether?
Well, I think it's the same general story, but maybe a different script. Maybe they've kind of reamped it a little bit, not to exactly follow what they had before, but maybe just tweak a few things that they think could be better that would fit more with modern times, I guess you could say. Because, we've changed from the 1950s to 2015. There's a huge difference in the
Right.
way
So
we look at things
yeah,
now.
kind of
So,
update it and make it more relevant to the time. So, like for example, um, with the new Power Rangers movie, as I stated before, that was always the Power Rangers always had the TV series, and that was like their core thing. And then they made the movie, and it had the central story revolving around Ivan Ooze as the main bad guy. But as the franchise itself didn't really rely on the movie, it maybe they could change the story, change the villain for the movie. But then you've got these iconic movies like Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street or Evil Dead or something like this, where the core thing revolves around that one movie. So maybe they won't change that in a reboot. They'll just do the same central story, like you said, but a little bit differently.
yeah, that's what I figure they would do. Like I said, there's several of them. It's just you can take that same script and same idea and just tweak it a little bit to adjust. Such as in the old Halloween, really didn't see a whole lot of his past. I think Rob Zombie introduced that because he had the same characters, same basis. He just built on the story that John Carpenter had. Uh,
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I think we've established the difference for the most part. So now let's move on and talk about um, some of the current remakes that they have been up to. Most current one that comes to mind would be probably like the new RoboCop. The new Evil Dead just came out not too long ago. Um, what's your take on what they've been doing lately? Do you think that they're just running out of ideas in the film industry to where they're having to remake all these movies, or what's the reasoning behind that?
okay, before we go that far, I gotta stop for a second and step out.
Okay. All right, and we're back. John, we were just about to dive into why they do these remakes in the first place, and some of the more recent ones. What is your opinion on those?
Uh, well, I think that they're trying to get new takes on things. I don't necessarily know if they've run out of ideas, or in some cases, I feel they are trying to get some new ideas brought out for a new generation of people to see these movies. And in some cases, they may actually have that opportunity where they're trying to cash in on a franchise name. You mentioned RoboCop. I don't feel like they were trying to really cash in on that name it's pretty well got a cult following. Some people enjoy it, some people don't. But I think with this updated version, you can see how technology has changed from the '80s up to now, and I think they've really implied that technology into that movie, which introduces to a whole new world of stuff. And another remake coming out this year, Poltergeist. I'm on the fence on this one because I did enjoy the original. Steven Spielberg had a really good movie, but on the other hand, I can see why to remake it to introduce to a whole new generation of people and have a new director's take on it, which is Sam Raimi, who is by far one of the best horror directors that I know.
Is Spielberg involved in this project at all right now?
Not that I know of. I haven't looked into it that hard yet, but I don't think he's involved in this one. I think this is just Sam Raimi and the production company only. And
Interesting.
I don't necessarily know if they're really trying to cash in on the name. I think they're trying to get a new reboot on the series and see if they can draw some more people in.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Is sometimes they want to take these iconic movies and then introduce them to the new generation, like you said. Because I mean, some of these are so classic that you just can't touch them. But then others, I mean, I would see the newest RoboCop, for example, since we're talking about that, as maybe a failure in terms of being quite as iconic as the original. And
Yeah.
maybe even what was that new one that they had just done? It was a remake of a movie similar to that, but the original had Sylvester Stallone. The new one had Carl Urban, I think. Um, there was a
Oh,
futurist,
Judge Dredd.
yeah, Judge Dredd. That one I didn't even watch that one because I just couldn't. I couldn't see one without Stallone. You know?
Yeah, that is true. I think what they did on that one, though, I did watch it. I think they stayed more true to the comics in a way. They kept it a little
Hmm.
bit more dark and mysterious because in that new Dredd movie, you don't even see Carl Urban's face. He never takes the helmet off.
Oh wow. Hmm. All right. Well, now let's kind of dive into some films that are remakes that people might not have known about were remakes. John, I know you have a few, so I'll let you go first and throw out some names that people might not have known were even remakes to begin with.
Okay, well, one that stands out, one of the most popular remakes, is actually from '82, and it was John Carpenter's The Thing. A lot of people see it. It's got Kurt Russell, good acting and stuff, but it was actually a remake of a 1951 The Thing from Outer Space. And that was probably one of the more successful remakes, although it bombed in the theaters.
Huh.
Because I think at the time it was competing with E.T. and all that. It was hard to compete with. But when people think of The Thing, they'll remember John Carpenter's The Thing.
Let me stop you right there real quick. Do you think that they will remake E.T.?
I don't know. As iconic of a movie as that is, I'm afraid they'll try. I don't know if they'll try to touch it or not. It's the same way with they've been toying around with the idea of remaking Jaws, and I couldn't even imagine the actors even play in a Jaws movie after seeing Schneider, uh, Richard Dreyfuss, and I wish I could think of the guy who played Quint in that. Now, Robert Shaw. I couldn't imagine anybody else playing those parts in that type of movie. I mean, for me, it would be hard. Now, I'm sure for a new generation, it'd be real easy. That's where you have to differentiate the old movie from the new movie and accept for what it is.
Yeah. Plus, like you said, in the original, it was more of a puppet type shark, right? And in the new one, it would probably be all computer graphics, like Transformers and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. No puppetry involved, really.
and I mean, and nothing to draw back from the graphics. They've come a long way in there, but man, it'd just be hard because they had those three robotic sharks that were real. That
Hmm.
was physical, something for them to act with that just makes it look so visually amazing for the '70s. That was
Yeah,
intense.
some of the computer graphics, I can't, buy into it. I can't suspend disbelief for that because it just doesn't look as real as it should, or as it could be, I guess, if they were using a real animatronic, like you said.
Yeah. Uh,
It takes you out
that's
of the
just
story.
a whole separate subject. But
Yeah.
another movie I can mention here is The Fly. And there was one made in the '80s that had Jeff Goldblum. It was an intense movie, and to a point. But it was a remake of an old Vincent Price movie. Granted, the old Vincent Price one I think it was the '50s or '60s when they made that one. Uh, it wasn't as graphic as what they did in the '80s, but it was still a remake of the old movie. It just, like I said, they reamped it, and they're actually talking about making another remake of that one. It's actually in the stages of script writing
Oh wow.
of redoing that movie.
Hmm. Are you still there? Well, it looks like we might have lost him for a second there. We'll see if he can manage to get his way back in here. Another one that people might not have known about was Ocean's 11. Uh, that one, the most recent one, came out in 2001, and I had no idea that was a remake, but apparently that was. So was The Departed from 2006. Another one that is a remake that a lot of people might know about is Dawn of the Dead, which 2004 was the most recent one, and to be honest, I like that one a lot more than the original. But it just could be, like John talked about before, a generational thing. So it's just kind of one of those deals where that was my Dawn of the Dead. That was the first one I was ever exposed to, and so that was obviously my favorite. John, it looks like you're back now, so I'll let you continue with your list.
No, anyway, trying to think. Let's see. Of course, another iconic one, King Kong, was remade back in '05, but most people know that there was a movie back in the '30s.
That's insane.
Trying to think some other examples.
I can't even imagine making a movie on that scale back in the 30s.
Yeah, law claymation.
Yeah. And then what about
uh,
Godzilla? That movie's been remade several times.
yeah, it has been, and I think that they keep trying to re-up it to go along with the times
Yeah.
compared to what it was. And I mean, I have nothing against it. I mean, more power to them. I mean, as long as it ain't that one that had Matthew Broderick and all that, I don't consider that Godzilla myself. But
Yeah, no, Godzilla the dinosaur.
yeah, the most recent one they did, I actually enjoyed. I thought they did pretty well on it.
Yeah. Not enough Bryan Cranston, but other than that, it was pretty good. Let's see. There's Psycho from 1960. That was a remake as well. Psycho from 1998. 310 to
Oh yeah.
Yuma. Oh, what about that John Wayne movie that they just remade not too long ago? That was
Oh
another. Yeah, that one
yeah.
was
Jeff Bridges played John Wayne's part. Oh, what was that?
True Grit or something.
Yeah, True Grit, True Grit. And actually, I pretty well enjoyed the remake as well as the original. So
Yeah, most of the people were on the fence about that one. They didn't want to see that classic get remade, but then I think a lot of people were pretty happy with it.
I think Jeff Bridges did well. Matt Damon did well for the part he played too. I think they stayed true to the characters and stuff. And I couldn't imagine somebody else when announced Jeff Bridges in it. I wasn't sure, but he shows versatility there by all
Yeah,
means.
yeah, I like him a lot. For me, he just kind of came out of nowhere, but for a lot of people, maybe they might have seen him around for a long time. I'm not sure.
Well, they a lot of them remembering from, let's see, of course, the low budget Tron from Disney back in the '80s,
Oh,
which was, he was in Tron, a few other Starman, which was another John Carpenter film actually, and that came out after E.T. and all that. He tried to capitalize because the thing didn't go over well, so I guess his idea was he'd do Starman
yeah,
as a friendlier alien movie to see if he couldn't redeem that, but and of course he's been around for quite a while. Pretty good
yeah,
actor, so but he filled that part in real well, and it was easy to picture him in those kind of roles.
yeah. All right. So let's move on here quickly. Some of the other remakes that people might remember would be The Grudge, or I think The Eye, that the one with Jessica Alba. Was that what it was called?
Yeah, there was the Eye, and then there was Shutter,
Yeah. And
um,
then The Ring, which
Dark
was a
Water, Ring. Yeah, all
yeah,
those were, and then of course Wreck, which transferred over to Quarantine for us, but
yeah,
all foreign films made into American for
yeah.
distribution.
I think honestly, my favorite foreign film that they remade was Old Boy, the Korean film originally.
Hmm.
And they tried to do that with the American, deal, but it just wasn't the same. It wasn't nearly as good. The original Old Boy was amazing, and it was such great storytelling, regardless if you speak the language or not. You could just tell, the actress portrayed it so well. You could feel, what they were going through just by facial expressions and everything else. So, um, So why do you think, John, that they do that? Why do you think they bring these foreign films to America and they feel like they need to remake them rather than just screen them here as they are?
Well, I view the originals, and the originals are very well done. Of course, you got subtitles. As long as it's not dubbed, I enjoy them subtitled. You get all the facial expressions, and you can really play out the movie. I think the big reason why they transfer them to English is because I think it's more appealing to a lot of people. They don't want to read subtitles. They don't want to have overdubbed people. They want to see an American version of this movie because it's just more convenient for them, and that's
Right.
fine. But sometimes I think that something gets lost in translation from what the original actors and director was doing compared to what we do here. I think something can be misinterpreted
Yeah.
what they wanted.
Yeah, right. And like you said before with the generational thing, it's almost a cultural thing in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the Japanese culture doesn't see life the same way that we do. I mean, obviously there are some differences, and I think that gets, portrayed in their film industry. And so it's just one of those things where you always take a risk when you do it. Like, well, I would say Let the Right One In or Let Me In, that remake, but as you have stated before, it wasn't really that great either way. So
Yeah.
it was just one of those
Not for
things
me
that.
anyway.
What was I think there was the lady with the dragon tattoo or the woman with the dragon tattoo. I think that was another remake that didn't. It just kind of missed the mark.
It did. It missed the mark big, which is I thought maybe it would do better, but it sure didn't.
Yeah. So it's interesting too to think about like these movies that we hold so iconic now, like these original movies. To think maybe in 20 years they're going to be remade somehow. And do you think like would we even still have television? Would we look at monitors or would we have it in our eyes already? I mean, that's a whole another podcast for the future, like literally for
Yeah.
the future too. But it's just interesting to think about. So I mean, I don't know. Who knows if they'll keep remaking movies going into the future?
I look for them too. I don't think that's something that's going to stop anytime soon. They've been doing it since the beginning. So, how many Dracula films are there? How many?
Yeah. Hmm. All right. Well, I think we're running short on time here. We got about another 5 minutes or so. So we're going to start wrapping it up. A lot of these remakes were notable, a lot weren't. One of them in particular that I would like to mention would be the Karate Kid remake. Most people who know me know how I feel about the Karate Kid remake, which should not even be called the Karate Kid, to be honest. It should be called the Kung Fu Kid because Jackie Chan does not do karate. He does kung fu. He's Chinese. Um, the original movie starred Ralph Macchio and Noriyuki or Pat Morita, and Pat passed away long before they made this reboot or remake, and it could almost be considered a reboot because they changed so much and put in their garbage like Will Smith's stupid son. But that's another issue. um, that's just another deal with. See, this is my problem with it. Like Will Smith didn't reach out to Ralph Macchio whatsoever. Daniel. He didn't reach out to him whatsoever. Didn't offer a cameo. Nothing. And Ralph said himself he probably wouldn't have accepted it even if they had. And he didn't plan on watching the movie, as far as I know. And I never planned on watching the movie either. And I made sure that I never gave a dime to that. And I haven't given a dime to Will Smith since then because he trampled on this classic movie. The Karate Kid is my favorite movie of all time, the original movie. And this is just another classic example of him trying to make his son into a star, and his son Jaden, who thinks he's a philosopher at freaking 12 years old or whatever he is. He's older than that now, but if you just follow his Twitter, take a look at his Twitter sometime. You'll love it. It's all, you would think it were comedy if you didn't know that he was being serious. So anyway, they used Jackie Chan, who does kung fu rather, not karate whatsoever. So they should have called it the Kung Fu Kid. But as we discussed earlier, talking about cashing in on a name, I feel like that's what they did. Is they called it the Karate Kid, regardless of it being kung fu. They changed the story quite a bit as well. It was still the same underdog type story, but it was just much more stupid, and they're trying to be relevant, but it just didn't work out really. I felt no emotional attachment whatsoever to the characters. I liked Jackie Chan before this film. I'm lukewarm on him now because he agreed to step on the legendary Pat Morita. But people will argue, oh, that's not what they were going for, and some people like the movie probably, but I think that's because, frankly, moviegoers now have lower expectations because they get sucked into the CGI and they get sucked into all these special effects and everything. When really, you look at these older films, the original films, and they had no special effects. They had heart, they had actors, they had a story, and that's really what it boils down to. The Karate Kid, the original Karate Kid, that's what it was based off of, and I believe that's why this remake failed so much, is because the heart just wasn't there, and you can't remake the magic that was the original Karate Kid. John, do you have any final closing thoughts on the whole?
Uh, on the whole, what gets me is what I'm going to wonder is we've had remakes such as Nightmare on Elm Street. Now we're getting ready to look at two different reboots on Ghostbusters. Uh, and in 10, 15 years, are these kids going to look back and look at these as the classics, or are they going to look at what they were remade from
Yeah,
compared to what there is today? I mean, is it in 20 years? Somebody mentions, "Oh, Nightmare on Elm Street." Yeah, I remember that from 2010. Well, we remember from 1980.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, I guess that's a generation gap that we have. Our only hope is that the classics will stay around as classics, that they can appreciate what the original story was and how far it's come to
yeah.
get to that point.
Yeah, and I think it is a good thing that a lot of these original films, like The Karate Kid and like the original Ghostbusters, are being released on Blu-ray, and a lot of them are being remastered. And it shows you that the film industry hasn't, whether or not they're just trying to make an extra buck, or if they're actually trying to preserve these great films, which it might be a little bit of both. Unless you're like Disney, who re-releases a movie every 10 years or so to make more money off of it.
And then they
But that's
put it
beside the
away
point.
for the next 9 years.
Yeah, it's in the vault for the next now. Oh, we're taking it out of the vault now. We need to make some more money off of it. Okay, we'll put it back in the
Yeah.
vault now. Anyway, so that's pretty much the gist of it. But I think going forward, hopefully these movies will be preserved. They will remember the original, but maybe not. I mean, like we said before, some of these movies have been remade 3 or 4 times now, and we don't remember the very, very original. But maybe the very, very original wasn't as good. We just, I don't know. And so I think we're just going to close it on that. Really, just try and stay true to the movies that you hold dear. And I mean, I for one, I know I'm going to show my kids the classics, and I know John, you probably do as well. So
Oh yeah, my son sees a lot of classics before the remakes.
yeah. So going forward, that's really all we can do. But yeah, thank you all for listening to this podcast and watching it if you are. And thank you to John for joining me for this podcast. And we will catch you next time on the Media Planet podcast.